All right, we're recording. Okay, thank you. Today I have Professor Songi Han from the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry, and we're going to talk about the MARC Scholar Program. And so I want to just ask Professor Han a few questions about the MARC Scholar Program and ask for some advice for students who are thinking about applying.
Mhm.
So let's start out, Professor Han. Why should students apply for the MARC program, in your opinion?
So the MARC program is a really great way of going outside your college box. Your college experience, I'm sure, has been great. But to go beyond that, it's an experience. And it is really about putting yourself out there, figuring out how the research world works. You will learn, but really the value is doing it, having done it. You will learn. It's really not it's not that the MARC program has this other goal that is a priority. It's really the research experience that you have a unique opportunity as an undergraduate student to have hands-on research experience. And that'll be, if you're thinking about a higher education grad program, it's a must. So,
So on that note, as a professor, how do you view students who apply to work with you and they have done programs like MARC? Is there anything like how does that look in their application when they're trying to work with you?
it's extremely important. So things that you traditionally think of how important your portfolio is, such as grades, they matter a little, you know, but it's just one ingredient. And think of it like there's a baseline. And of course, we want to see that you have studied, but that's more like a baseline. I'm looking in my application a student who is willing to go beyond that, explore and experience. And especially if you don't come from an environment that you have done this before, it's even more valuable. And if when you write a statement of purpose for grad school, I look for a story. Does the student have a story to tell? And when you do participate in something like a MARC Scholar, because you are going to learn something new and experience something new, you will have a good story to tell based on real experience. Of course, not because there's a story, but because of real experiences. It's very valuable. Research experience by itself, but also being a MARC Scholar is an award.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, in grad school, you think about GPAs as a kind of a baseline as part of the process. A lot of students, when they're thinking about applying for the MARC program, especially because they're in, sophomore year, they might have had a challenging course and maybe a grade that they don't feel too great about. How does the MARC program look at GPAs and what advice do you have for students who are worried about, a bad grade and may think about not applying?
I say, don't worry about it, just go for it, right? Even when we evaluate, especially for grad school, when we evaluate grade, sure, if you have like a perfect grade and a perfect experience, there's nothing wrong with that either, right? Let's say there is a blip. We look whether there is a story. Maybe the students didn't think much about grades in the first 2 years, and then you got into a MARC scholarship, and you got really excited about research, and either the subject matter of interest to you are great, or you improve the grades. Those are the stories we are looking for. So think of grade just as one mechanism, but the real deal is the research. Because why do you go to grad school and higher education? Because you want to become a leader, a scientist, somebody who can explore professionally. So no, the grades are just a vehicle. It is not the most important thing we are looking for.
So your message is then that grades are part of as a way to tell your story, but it's not the only way to tell your story. And you should, as a student who's applying, you should take advantage of other
Absolutely.
parts to tell your story.
And I would say, of course, if you have a perfect grade, good for you. If you have a medium grade or even a poor grade, there's no better way to improve your story than participate in something like a MARC Scholar. You have something to say. I wasn't very motivated, or initially I lost, somehow missed the mark. But once I understood, I was able to improve myself. So those are the stories we are looking for. And this is a best mechanism to improve that record, actually.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you probably have stories of students that you knew or that somebody in the department knew.
Mhm.
I have friends who, they had below a 3, but
Mhm.
they had, because they, weren't really interested in grades, but they had a research experience that just changed their whole perspective and got into graduate school and continued on to do
I have
research. But
plenty of stories like
yeah,
that. I have
yeah.
plenty of stories. I have one student, two students who were working in my lab. Both were fantastic. And in one case, Evelyn, she was right below 3. And the below 3 is challenging because there are grad schools that technically don't allow below 3.
Mhm,
She knew she had that handicap. However, she did a marvelous job with research. So I, of course, wrote her strong letters. She didn't get in everywhere. That's the nature of things, right? But she got into UMass. It's a really good biochemistry program. And as far as I know, she's doing fabulously. And so it's just choices that you have. There's another student, Andrew. In his case, his GPA was right above 3. It did make a difference, I have to say, just because their programs look for that. Again, he was probably one of the best undergraduate researchers I've ever had. And he got into even more schools. But both Evelyn and Andrew did well. And one had even more option. But what matters is that you got an option. It's not that
mhm.
if you have 5 options, what are you going to do with those 5 options? You need one option and do
Yeah.
something with it, right?
Yes, so you need an option and you need to do something with it. And so
Exactly.
the Mark Scholar program can be one of those options that can help you, figure out what your story is and tell a compelling story so you can go and do what you want to do.
Yeah, and tell a compelling story because you experienced it, right? It's interesting. You can't tell a story without having actually felt it. And it
Mhm.
you see, you cannot write it first of all to begin with, and somebody else will know. But the Mark Scholar gives you that experience, and therefore you have a story.
And on that note, you talked about your process for kind of looking at graduate school applications. We have a lot of students who said, I sent out a survey a month or so ago, and a lot of people said, I'm worried that I'm not qualified. I feel underqualified. I haven't, to apply for the mark, I haven't had enough research experience, or I haven't taken enough classes, or I don't know what my project would be. What kind of advice do you have for students who are worried that they're not competitive or unqualified for the MARC program?
Really, you really shouldn't spend so much time doubting yourself. Rather, why not aspire high? And it doesn't matter. Look, grad school isn't rocket science. It's really about putting yourself out there, being brave, and going through it. It's grad school is about putting you out there and deciding, I have no idea how to get through it, but let me get started. And you go through the door, and then you still don't know how the end will look like, and you just persevere and you do it. And that experience, that is why once you graduate with a PhD, that many different companies will want to hire you as higher level position is not because you know a thing or two more about that specific area you did. Sometimes that's the case, but it's because you put yourself out there, get started, and fought through a difficult process. And you started without knowing anything. Everyone starts out without knowing anything, and you made it.
Mhm,
That act of putting yourself out there and making it, that is so valuable that, let's say, the stock market, I don't know, company, I don't know what those companies are, they hire physicists, right? Not because they need elementary particle physicists or quantum physicists, but because they know, oh, these people know how they went through the process. And it's true just in general. So aspire high. Don't worry about what you can do now. But it really is about getting over your fear, and getting started is the act that you need to be able to do grad school, and it's worth it. I mean, you want to have more opportunity. You want to be at a higher level position so you can make a difference. Why not?
Honestly, that is the best way to end this interview, Songi. That's the best advice, to if you're feeling unqualified, you don't know this, don't know that, you know what? Stop doubting yourself because the most important thing that people are looking for is somebody who just puts themselves out there, who tries, who just starts, and just keeps going step by step and figuring it out as you go. And so I love that advice, and I hope that the students who are watching this will really take that to heart.
Mhm.
Any last words or advice or notes for students who are watching and thinking about applying?
Yeah, I mean, it's the pandemic. It's tough, but it'll be over. It'll be over, and it's gonna be a story that we are gonna talk about when we are grandmas or grandpas. We are gonna talk about this time. And think about, you want to say also a story about this time that, it was tough, but I did this, I tried this, I started this program, and I wish you all the best, that you have something, a nice hook that you can, go with, and yeah, make make the best out of the current time.
So wise. Thank you so much, Professor Han. And I hope that everyone watching enjoys this interview.